Within the family of companies, do you see yourself as is Turner competing with, say, Warner Brothers? Is what you're doing with kids and news competing with film, feature film, or is there some compatibility? Is film relevant to what you're doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, we are a broadcaster of movies on our TNT channels around Europe and Turner Classic Movies where it exists. Warner's have their own strategy, which is on-demand branded channels, which is slightly different from linear, but we're not in competition, I wouldn't say. They're complementary. But we're certainly moving closer together in terms of businesses and how we think about things. I mean, we as Turner are moving into the consumer. Well, have moved into the consumer products business. We are syndicating branded blocks. I mean, the world of Turner was pay TV, 24-hour linear channels. Now we've got umpteen branded blocks on third-party DTT channels around Europe. Very efficient business model for us. No setup costs, play out. It is simply syndicating out a branded block. Equally, you know, Warner Brothers are launching WBTV on demand platforms. They're moving closer from that point of view. Equally in the Middle East, and I thought, you know, the hell would freeze over, but we have a free-to-air business in the Middle East, underpinned by advertising, sales and consumer products. So business models are changing all the time, and we fit where we touch with Warner's.
Okay. If I can now turn to David, David, to you. The filmmaker, so to speak, on the panel. Does working title see the world as a word of opportunity or increasingly a word of threat?
Well, I think opportunity. There are threats. I mean, you obviously touched on piracy, and that's something that I think we, can't ignore. But, in our case, it's something that's handled really by Universal, by the studio. There's a world of opportunity. I mean, there always has been a world of opportunity, both in terms of markets, but also in terms of what you produce. 3D has obviously created a new opportunity. I'm sure there will be another version of something that we haven't even thought of just yet that's going to be around the corner. But it's certainly a world of opportunity, but not without threats. I mean, there are things that we have to be wary of, and I do think we have to be careful in terms of people's leisure time. There are a lot of other things that are clearly vying for their leisure time, and we need to make sure that we are utilising the internet to bring people to the cinema, not just, shutting doors and ignoring it. And
do you find, does working title, are you conscious all the time of the ever-raising expectations of audiences and the need to where the bar keeps being raised creatively or in terms of production values, or in terms of the wow, if you like, of movies, that you've got to try and keep up with that? Is that a thing you're constantly aware of?
Yeah, I mean, as somebody, I came from the old, and I unfortunately quote this quite a lot, but there's a chap that I used to work for called Michael Kuhn, and there's other people in the room that used to work for Michael Kuhn, and he always used to say, what we should do is make something that's different, but not too different. And I think that we need to create something that has an edge. But you talk about I don't know how you'd describe it, but, kind of ever more kind of interesting product and opportunities that are out there. I feel sometimes the film industry, it moves in waves where you suddenly get something like Avatar and you go, well, really, that was genuinely a step forward. And then I think you also get then everybody going, let's do an Avatar. And we all try and do exactly the same thing. And that can create, and you obviously see I don't know what you say, over a number of years, the sort of seasonality of let's have 19 science fiction movies all in one great big cluster, and then obviously the last one's starting to fail, and then we move in and we're all going to do great big, swords and sandal epics, and everybody does those, and then you drift down because the last one of those isn't terribly successful. So I don't know if there is. I don't know if the business does get sort of ever more interesting and creative. It has steps forward, and then it kind of plateaus a little bit, and then it has a step forward. That's my point of view.
And at Working Title, are you aware of working within a global strategy that Universal has, a template that Universal has laid down, or do you indeed yourselves have a global strategy? Do you think about India as an opportunity?
We don't. Not really. Not in terms of those markets. I mean, we're producing movies, And, sometimes our movies are more successful in one place than they are in another. Well, they very often are. They're more successful in America, and in Australia, and in the UK, and in Europe. India may be an opportunity, but we wouldn't make something with India in mind. You have to service your strengths. You can't really build something with, especially something expensive. You can't spend $40 million hoping to cater to something in India. You have to be catering to, the global business, and then if there's anything else that you get that's a bonus, that's fantastic. But we couldn't do, of course, we could decide to go and make specifically an Indian film. We don't, but we could. But I don't think you could. You can't be based in the UK and spend, $40 million on something with India in mind.
Okay. If I could just go back to Claire, and I want to ask a question about Windows. In your work with your various clients, strategically, taking a sort of longish view, is the game up with Windows? Is the expectation that we're going to have either simultaneous on all platforms or just a cinema and then everything else? What's going to happen with Windows? Because historically, the film industry has played the game of restricting access to content, which is really an odd thing in terms of most business practices, to not let people see what you've produced. Is that going to go?
We've obviously seen a big step in that direction with the Odeon-Disney dispute and how that went. So, and we've seen a consistent move towards a much narrower windowing. I think that's inevitable. But I don't think we'll get to day and date worldwide, simply because you can't put your star in multiple locations simultaneously. They have to be given the chance to have premieres here and there. But I think overall that is one of the ways in which you can limit piracy. And it also takes account of the fact that I think is a very key factor of the media marketplace, whether it's in music or in movies, which is you have a much shorter time frame in which to exploit your product across all of these different phenomena that it is going to be exploited across. So, in a sense, speeding up the process of exploitation, maximizing your marketing dollars, your visibility, your global space for that moment, using whatever channels to market you can figure out, including smartphones as marketing platforms for movies. Whatever you're going to do to get your consumption level absolutely peaking in that first month is key, because as we know from the UK cinema, things drop off a lot after the first month, and you certainly, as you said, know if you're onto a winner or a loser. So I think that's really what's driving that. I think the issue is that we've also seen the pay window move very, very steadily, and I think that makes sense too, because the studios are very reliant on the payverse, and particularly with the drop in television sales worldwide, which is really related to the problems in advertising-funded models. The payverse is even more important to the future of the studios, and therefore, getting the balance right between movies, DVD, and payverse is still a very, very critical feature of the model.
Casey, can I ask a related question, which is about territories? You talked earlier about localization. That it's good to have a global strategy, but it becomes local very quickly. The online universe doesn't actually recognise territorial boundaries at all. Or in a very limited way. At Turner, looking forward, how real are the territories? Territorial rights, territorial exploitation, is that going to remain, so to speak, into the foreseeable future, or will that also be breaking down, especially in the online space?
There's rights issues wherever you go, and that'll dictate what you can and can't do. It's interesting. You look at the people, new gaming companies like Zynga and Playfish, and it seems about as good as it gets. They have one solution, it works globally, micropayments, what have you. But in order to go to the next step, you're going to have to localise. And something like Google works because it is uber local. It drills down to exactly the piece of information you want and the locality you want, and the whole world is moving to sort of more geolocation-based services. In order for us, from a content point of view, to have an efficient model, we don't want to be recreating the content, many, many times. So what we've done, again, a technology is a solution to this for our websites in particular. We invested in the content management system, and what that allows to do is have one framework for our websites, but these can be updated locally in each country by our local marketing teams, programming teams, and these are the people that make the difference. Not some webmaster sat in Berlin doing his German site. It's actually empowering everybody to understand social networking. And it is largely the same content, but let's say from a news point of view, if you put a German story at the top of the slot, it's going to get more German. Half of it's sort of cosmetics in many ways, taking the content and just putting it in the right order for that audience, and that's best done at a local level. But yeah, I believe the internet is becoming more local, but to the extent you can apply global business models and technology solutions behind that, if that makes any sense.
Okay.